Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 23. Chaotic Situation. Chen Xing immediately understood why Fu Jian would make the decision to behead Feng Qianjun so quickly. He has to give the Murongs an account first to appease them for the time being. He was going to behead Feng Qianjun to intimidate the Feng family, but more importantly, "I must save him," Chen Xing said. "He didn't do anything at all, Feng Dage is innocent." "That's their intention," Tuoba Yan said anxiously. "Wang Zi must have come up with this idea. He wants to lure you and the great Chanyu out." Chen Xing understood the reason behind it, but he had to go. How could he just stand by and watch Feng Qianjun get beheaded? "What do you want to do?" Tuoba Yan asked seriously. "Tell me. What can you do?" "Rush in that recklessly to break him out of prison." Chen Xing looked at Tuoba Yan. Of course he wouldn't ask Tuoba Yan to rescue Feng Qianjun by force for him, that would be too much of an imposition. "Can't wait for Xiangshu anymore," Chen Xing said. "Brother Tuoba, I need to go to the execution ground." Chen Xing has always been the type to take one step at a time. After experiencing the fall of Xiangyang, he had no doubt at all that by relying on his luck, even if he were to shout "hold the execution" and rush in, he would be able to get Feng Qianjun out without any mishap. Tuoba Yan couldn't convince Chen Xing no matter what, so in the end, he could only say, "Okay. I'll think of something. I'll go see His Majesty now." "You don't need to care about this," Chen Xing said. "You just need to send me on to the execution ground, to the execution ground." So Tuoba Yan could only just order his men to prepare a horse and let Chen Xing get into a carriage. Night had fallen. Before Chen Xing boarded the carriage, he suddenly felt like something was wrong. In the evening at the U period, a strange atmosphere had pervaded Chang'an city, and a strong gale suddenly stirred up out of nowhere. "What's wrong?" Tuoba Yan asked patiently. Chen Xing shook his head and got on the carriage. On the way to the execution ground, Tuoba Yan exhorted him time and time again that he couldn't come out and had to hide inside the carriage and watch from afar through the carriage curtains. "I'll notify the execution supervisor," Tuoba Yan said. "I'll try my best." Then he left on his horse. 2 quarters after the U period, the evening drums were beating, its dongs sounding one after another. A group started gathering towards West Street under this overcast sky with surging, dark clouds. This was the first time in history for the Great Qin to execute a prisoner in the evening ever since the construction of Chang'an. Chen Xing pulled a corner of the carriage curtain to look out. A high platform had been set up at the execution ground. On the other side of West Street, it was filled with mostly Murong members dressed in fine clothes who was there to watch the execution. On the other end of the execution ground were the soldiers who were alert and battle-ready. Within a short moment, countless thoughts had flashed through Chen Xing's mind. If he wanted to save Feng Qianjun, then sure enough, only the simplest and roughest method could be used: rush out while shouting "hold the execution," then offer the condition of exchanging himself for the prisoner to keep Feng Qianjun alive for now, after which he would get taken away to meet Fu Jian with Feng Qianjun. Someone suddenly knocked on the carriage from the outside, and a piece of paper came in through the carriage window. "Chen Xing." Several words were written on the paper. "Don't act recklessly, I'll save him." Chen Xing immediately drew the curtain and saw the back of a man, who seemed very familiar, but Chen Xing couldn't remember where he had seen him before. When he looked at the direction he was leaving in, he saw that the man had mixed in with the crowd. A group of people had gathered in the distance to watch. Chen Xing's gaze followed along, and under the dim illumination of the dark sky, he saw that in the midst of the ground, standing about half a head taller than everyone else, was Xiangshu, wearing a bamboo hat. Xiangshu grasped his bamboo hat and lifted it slightly, exchanging gazes with Chen Xing, who was on the carriage. Chen Xing felt more at ease now. Since Xiangshu was here, he must have a plan. What did he do the entire afternoon? Chen Xing scrutinized that group of people doubtfully and finally remembered. They were the ones who came to visit Xiangshu, the great Chan Yu, on the first day of their stay in the Viang Palace, the Hu tribes who had been neglected by Fujian. When Feng Qianjun was escorted onto the platform, the crowd gathered at the execution ground grew restless. Everyone from the Murong family was shouting angrily one after another. Feng Qianjun's hair was in a disheveled mess while his face was covered with blood, both his hands were tied behind his back. His Majesty has issued an order. The execution supervisor said loudly. The Feng family's Feng Qianjun entered the palace late at night and committed high treason by trying to assassinate His Majesty, the Divine Emperor. Thus, he will be executed here immediately. Chen Xing's heart reached his throat. However, the gales at the execution ground grew stronger and stronger, such that in the end, wind interspersed with sand obscured the sky. Chilly winds were howling fiercely throughout Chang'an city. Resentment. Chen Xing drew the curtains of the carriage and dismounted. A gloomy darkness pervaded the execution ground. It had already been dusk, and now it was so dark that one couldn't even discern the outline of their fingers. People everywhere were shielding themselves from the swirling sand and rocks with their arms. Feng Qianjun's head was already spinning, and now he raised his head to look towards the sky. The bell tower rang madly in the midst of this hurricane. Fujian, who was concealing himself in the dark, suddenly walked out, and stared at the sky in disbelief. On another building along Chang'an's West Street, Feng Qianyi faced the execution ground as he sat in his wheelchair. He held the yin-yang mirror in his hands, and a black vapor instantly erupted. The resentment in the mirror world burst out in a moment and submerged the entire Chang'an city. Xiang Shu was prepared long ago, but he didn't expect such an event, so he promptly signaled to the men he had recruited at the last minute not to go forward. Chen Xing raised his head in the midst of the fierce gales and saw Feng Qianyi in the distance, who was wearing a mask. "It's you!" Chen Xing shouted. Although Feng Qianyi was quite a distance away from him, his voice was still clearly transmitted into Chen Xing's ears. "You actually managed to break through the array I set up for so many years," Feng Qianyi said coldly, "and escape from the yin-yang mirror unscathed. I really underestimated you." Then, without anyone's notice, Feng Qianyi pushed the yin-yang mirror out that he had gotten back from somewhere, and a monstrous mass of black vapor burst out of the mirror and surged crazily towards Chen Xing. Chen Xing roared angrily, "Bastard! Feng Qianyi! Lao Zi's expelling you from the exorcism department." Immediately afterwards, Chen Xing withdrew both his hands as well and threw them up to face upwards at a slanted angle. A resplendent light instantly burst out of the heart lamp, broke through the darkness, and rushed upwards against the current. The black vapor swept over like a tsunami, yet it couldn't get near Chen Xing. It avoided the heart lamp's light as it swirled around the execution ground, then gathered to form shadow warriors. A howl of anguish could be heard from the executioner, and a massive amount of blood spilt out in an instant. The crowd began screaming in a panic as they started dispersing within the darkness. Chen Xing turned back and once again looked at Feng Qianyi, who was situated on higher ground. For a moment, he couldn't decide whether he should rush forward to seize the yin-yang mirror back, yet he heard Xiang Shu shout at another side, "Save people first! I'll go capture him right now!" His shout woke Chen Xing up from his trance, and he immediately rushed onto the execution ground. The black vapor was already circling around Feng Qianjun, revealing the figure of a warrior. What do they want to do? Just before Chen Xing managed to get close, the warrior brandished its sword and moved to forcibly snatch Feng Qianjun away. Chen Xing suddenly understood Feng Qianyi's goal was the same as theirs. He wanted to rescue Feng Qianjun. He couldn't make up his mind on whether he should just let Feng Qianyi save his younger brother, but Xiang Shu had already drawn close. With one flick of his sword, a loud clang sounded, and he had forced the shadow warrior away. "Take him away!" Xiang Shu shouted. Chen Xing immediately cut the rope around Feng Qianjun's body with his dagger. A warrior suddenly rushed forth to kill them from behind, but another figure appeared beside him and with a clang, parried with the weapon and guarded Chen Xing from behind. It was Tuobayan. The black vapor burst forth again in an instant, and 5 or 6 shadow warriors rushed up from different angles. Blood sprayed out from Tuoba Yan's arm as he blocked a hit for Chen Xing. He swung the halberd in his hands, and in the midst of loud blares, he had knocked all of their enemies away. Tuoba Yan shouted, "Go!" Chen Xing pulled Feng Qianjun's arm, then half carried and half supported him to stagger down from the execution platform. Black vapor had diffused throughout the entire Chang'an city, as if it was a deep, dark night. Screams could be heard everywhere in the darkness. "Leave this place!" Chen Xing shouted, "Everyone, run! Hurry and run! Tuoba Yan! Take care of him!" Without any need for his reminder, the people knew that staying alive was important too and had already begun fleeing in panic. It was a chaotic mess outside of the execution ground. Chen Xing handed Feng Qianjun to Tuoba Yan, emitting a burst of bright light from his palm to try and discern the direction, and shouted, "Where's Xiangshu? Xiangshu! I must catch up to Feng Qianyi immediately. He's activating the yin-yang mirror." Chen Xing forcibly spurred the heart lamp a few times to search for Xiangshu's whereabouts, but someone grabbed his arm. "Chen Tianke?" that low voice asked. Chen Xing's heart jolted. It was Fu Jian. Fu Jian didn't allow him any time to speak before locking down on Chen Xing's throat and dragging him to one side. He shouted, "Where is Tuoba Yan? Gather the Imperial Guards. Everyone, follow me. Get to higher ground." Chen Xing was still half carrying Feng Qianjun as he was forcibly taken to a watchtower at West Street. As he looked over from high ground, he saw the black vapor sweeping across Chang'an. "Capture Feng Qianyi." Chen Xing knew that the situation was really bad now. After Feng Qianyi's array was broken through, he finally decided to activate the yin-yang mirror. Yet Fu Jian clutched Chen Xing harshly and shouted, "Explain everything clearly to me." "There's no time to explain." Chen Xing shouted back, "Let me go. I'm the only one who can stop Feng Qianyi." Fu Jian was stunned, but a muffled roar came from afar, as if millions of yaos were roaring at the same time. When Chen Xing heard that, he knew it was too late. "Fu Jian, you're in trouble now," Chen Xing muttered. Fu Jian let go of Chen Xing's lapel and looked towards Chang'an City. Xiangshu led the various Hu tribes to rush toward the high-rise at Chang'an's West Street, but the top floor of the high-rise exploded with a loud blast and collapsed under the black resentment vapor. All of the resentment from within the yin-yang mirror's mirror world had been released. "Fu Jian," Feng Qianyi's voice echoed through the world, "you seized our great Qin's power, destroyed our divine land, slaughtered us Han people, killed my family, broke my legs." Chen Xing's eyes suddenly widened. At the same time, all of the bronze mirrors within Chang'an City flashed at the same time and shot out rays of black light. Feng Qianyi hovered in the air, and there was nothing beneath his robe. He held the yin-yang mirror in his hands. Runes were swirling everywhere as they shone with a purplish-black luster. Shouts filled with dread could be heard throughout the houses in Chang'an City. It was close to 1,000,000 cries that converged into a powerful flood, and Chen Xing's spine went numb from listening to it. The power of the yin-yang mirror was fully unleashed in an instant. All of the mirrors connected to the fantasy world in this moment, and all of the living corpses that had been locked up in the mirror's Chang'an passed through the passage instantaneously and gushed out. Screams could be heard everywhere in the city. Xiangshu mounted his horse, spurred it harshly several times, and the horse rushed to the second floor along the weak tiles, then leapt high up into the sky before galloping onto the tower. Following which, Xiangshu flew onto the banisters, borrowed the momentum he gained to jump up again, and pulled back the string of a huge bow that was about half the size of an adult, drawing a full moon arc. Chen Xing broke out of Fu Jian's grasp and rushed to a high point in the tower and shouted, "Break!" Then he used all his might to urge the light of the heart lamp in both hands to its maximum. When Xiangshu's arrow was about to leave the string of his bow, a dazzling light erupted from it, and it turned into a light arrow, then whizzed through the air with a swish after it was released. That arrow drew out a trail of light behind it within the dark night, and with incredible accuracy, struck the yin-yang mirror in Fei Tian Ye's hands with a clang. The yin-yang mirror whirled into the air in an instant as it was sent flying. Chen Xing cheered loudly and rushed down the tower, while Xiangshu landed on the ground. Fei Tian Ye roared with great indignation, billowing black smoke shot out from underneath his robe and swiftly flew towards the yin-yang mirror. Intercept that mirror! Chen Xing didn't care about anything else as he shouted loudly. In the next moment, another arrow flew over. It had been released from Tuoba Yan's bow as he rode a horse along the street. As if it was part of a meteor relay, the second arrow struck the mirror. A soft clang sounded upon impact with the yin-yang mirror again, and it drew an arc as it flew towards the tower. The flying mirror was less than 30 steps away from Chen Xing when it landed on the ground once again, but an arrow suddenly flew over from above that brushed by it obliquely and struck the edge of the yin-yang mirror with a clang. The mirror started rotating once again and flew towards Chen Xing. On the watchtower, Fu Jian withdrew his long bow with a gaze full of alarm as he looked at Chang'an City in disbelief. Chen Xing had obtained the yin-yang mirror, just as he had wished for. He couldn't spare any attention to avoid anyone as he stood below the watchtower and proffered up the magic weapon, then began casting his spell. A white light burst out that buzzed and shook. The runes revolving in the air above Chang'an City flew over in quick succession as they got sucked back into the mirror. How could I let you ruin my plans? Fei Tian Ye roared madly and flew towards Chen Xing while dragging a trail of billowing black vapor behind him. Before anyone could react, Xiangshu turned sideways, slid over to stand in front of Chen Xing, and swung his long bow down. Fu Jian roared from above, "Release the arrows! Kill the sorcerer!" Arrows of the Imperial Guards were released from their bows one after another and shot toward the sky. Fei Tian Ye was apparently not afraid of ordinary weapons and only feared the light arrows in Xiangshu's hands, and he abruptly sprung up. Chen Xing took this chance to reverse the yin-yang mirror by collecting the black vapor that had blotted out the sky and successfully sucked it all back into the mirror. Within an instant, the resentment that had pervaded Chang'an City returned to its original state, but pained wails were still ringing out in all directions. "Xiangshu, suck the living corpses back." "I can't," Chen Xing said, "it can only suck in resentment. They've all run out now." Fu Jian hurried down and shouted, "Shulakong, explain this clearly to Zhen. What on earth is going on?" "Xiangshu, I will give you an account, but not now." "Jiantou, are you sure you want to start nagging here?" "Report." One of the Imperial Guards rushed over and shouted, "Your Majesty! The city is full of living dead people." Tuoba Yan spurred his horse to ride over and shouted, "Retreat and defend the Imperial Palace! Retreat and defend the Imperial Palace! Protect His Majesty!" Fu Jian was incredibly furious, but he was powerless and could only wave his hand to order the rest to return to the palace. During the Su period, the Imperial Guards clustered around Fu Jian as they returned to the palace. Xiangshu immediately got Chen Xing to mount a horse. Fortunately, Tuoba Yan had made preparations beforehand and rearranged the city's defense in advance. 50,000 Imperial Guards throughout the city resembled a tide as they flooded back to guard the inner city of Chang'an. However, good times don't last. When they arrived in front of the palace, cries of dread rang out from the inside. "There's some in the palace too." Tuoba Yan felt as if his blood coagulated. He said, "Hurry. All of you, go. Take the mirror along." Chen Xing tried to use the mirror to suck in the living corpses, but the yin-yang mirror had already been refined with resentment by Fei Tian Ye, so it was quite unstable and kept shaking. If he tried to force it, the resentment in the mirror world might just burst right out in an instant again. He immediately shouted, "It won't work. The mirror's on the verge of exploding." Xiangshu led the warriors under his command and explained what had happened to them. Chen Xing couldn't understand their language, but he saw that Fu Jian's expression was extremely solemn. Xiangshu then made a gesture, and everyone responded in agreement. They actually didn't feel fearful at all about rushing into the palace and fighting this bunch of drought fiends that had suddenly appeared head-on. Wait. Fu Jian suddenly said. Everyone looked towards Fu Jian at the same time. Fu Jian remained silent for a while, then said, Tuaba Yan, gather the troops in the city and send an order out to the 4 generals, just find as many as you can. The imperial guards will rescue the people in the city. Try to rescue as many as possible. Follow Zhen to Offang Palace. Xiang Shu said coldly, you want to give up on all the people in Chang'an. Fu Jian said angrily, the city is already in this much of a mess, and you can't even see your 5 fingers outstretched in front of you, how can the army be mobilized? Xiang Shu shouted, Jian Tou. Did your courage and judgment all get devoured by dogs? Fu Jian roared, Shula Kong. Are you the emperor or am I the emperor? Don't fight. Chen Xing said quickly, Xiang Shu. Chen Xing signaled to him with his gaze. Xiang Shu took a deep breath and dropped it. Tuaba Yan immediately issued an order to ready the horses and temporarily gave up on Viang Palace as he followed Fu Jian out of the city. Screams and howls of anguish could be heard everywhere in Chang'an City. As soon as ordinary people saw drought fiends, the feeling of dread outweighed their fear of death, and they shrieked until their voices went hoarse. Chen Xing and Xiang Shu rode horses side by side, but Xiang Shu suddenly turned around and left. Where are you going? Chen Xing shouted anxiously. Xiang Shu shouted from afar, take care of Feng Qianjun. Chen Xing was about to turn around to chase Xiang Shu when Fu Jian rushed over from the side and grabbed the reins of his mount. He shouted, go. Chen Tianke. Explain this to me properly. What on earth is going on? Let me go. Chen Xing said. Fu Jian, explain this first. Otherwise don't even think about going anywhere else. Chen Xing didn't dare to jump off his horse, so he could only follow Fu Jian out of the city while he gave a brief overview of the whole story. While he was doing so, he kept looking back as he worried about Xiang Shu's safety. Yet Fu Jian reminded him, then how should we deal with those drought fiends? Chop their heads off. Chen Xing said as he gasped for breath, and take note to never get bitten or scratched at all costs. Living corpses carry corpse poison with them. Tuaba Yan caught up to them and heard their conversation. Fu Jian signaled to him, and Tuaba Yan nodded. Chen Xing continued, there's another way, burn them with fire. Although this idea was thought up by Chen Xing himself, no matter what kind of yao it is, as long as they are burned to ashes, they would not be able to do harm in the human world any longer. After they're burned, it could contain the spread of their corpse poison as well. Fu Jian said, we'll have to find a way to lure them outside Offang Palace, then use kerosene and saltpeter canisters to set them all on fire. Chen Xing couldn't help but admire Fu Jian when he heard this. Sure enough, as the Emperor of the North, he was quite capable after all. Fighting a decisive battle within Chang'an City would not only make it easy to injure people by mistake, but it would be quite impossible to carry out as well. However, once they were out of the capital, it would be vast and deserted, and there are a lot of plants in the wilderness that would make it easier for them to create a favorable situation. General Guanjun has arrived, someone shouted. General Hu Wei has arrived. The military officers of Fu Jian's court reacted very quickly and chased after the emperor until they were out of the city. There were more and more troops now, and in the end, there were at least 200,000 troops on the plain that were galloping in a grandiose formation towards Offang Palace that was more than 30 miles away from the city. Chia. After Chen Xing left the city, he immediately turned his horse around to go back and look for Xiang Shu. Where is he? Chen Xing's heart was practically burning with anxiety. When he entered Chang'an City, his hand glowed with the heart lamp's light that instantly dispersed the living corpses filling the streets and cleared a path. A lot of living corpses were pursuing the people in the city, and once caught, they would push them down onto the floor and bite them. Many people were trying their best to break free from their grasps, Sorrowful cries and the shouts of killing were abound. Wherever Chen Xing passed by, living corpses would flee in fear. Chen Xing shouted, "Leave through the White Tiger Gate. Go to Offang Palace. His Majesty is there." The people began dashing away like they had gone mad. Chen Xing was afraid that his horse would trample on innocent people, so he could only abandon his horse and travel on foot. He grabbed someone at random and shouted, "Where's the great Chan Yu? Have you seen the great Chan Yu?" Someone looked towards the inner city with dread evident in their eyes, so Chen Xing knew that Xiangshu had killed his way back in again, so he quickly rushed into the street. At this moment, Xiangshu had already gathered thousands of people, both Hus and Hans included. There were more and more people now who were confronting the group of drought fiends that were moving collectively along the streets. Many people had picked up weapons from the ground and joined this group of people in a panic without knowing Xiangshu's identity. Some who people recognized Xiangshu, so they rushed to kill with their lives on the line. Xiangshu shouted loudly in the Xiongnu language, "Cut off the enemies' heads." Xiangshu was trapped on both sides, but a ray of light shot over from the end of the street that penetrated through the darkness. The army of living corpses all howled in anguish as they were rooted one after another. Xiangshu turned his head abruptly and saw Chen Xing standing at the end of the street with his head held up high, and traces of anger were apparent on his face. A warm, white light was being emitted from his hands. "Xiangshu!" Chen Xing shouted angrily, "What are you doing again?" Xiangshu whistled, and the temporary army that he had organized began gathering all around him. He spurred his horse forward, extended a hand, and pulled Chen Xing up to sit on a horse. "Exit the city!" Xiangshu shouted. The 4 gates of Chang'an were open wide, and everywhere was filled with people who were escaping in a flurry in the middle of the night. Xiangshu led the Hu cavalry and had rescued quite a lot of people from within Chang'an city at some time. They gathered into a clamorous group, both Hu and Han were included within, and they all looked towards Xiangshu with worry flooding their gazes. A black figure wielding a halberd appeared in the direction facing the palace. As they observed that figure, they could tell that it was the shadow warrior that tried to hunt them down in the mirror world. Xiangshu wanted about to draw his bowstring, but the distance between them was too great, and it was difficult to aim at night, so he decided against it. Chen Xing urged his horse to come after him. Xiangshu took a deep breath and looked at him. "They've already retreated onto the official road," Chen Xing said. Xiangshu kept his bow and said, "Follow me to kill our way back. I have something I want to ask Fei Tian Ye about." "No," Chen Xing said. "Xiangshu, don't be impulsive." Xiangshu said, "Your heart lamp can expel the drought fiends. Follow me." Chen Xing said, "Then what about them?" Chen Xing motioned for Xiangshu to look at the men, women, old, and young people he had rescued. He suddenly felt like Xiangshu was really reliable at this kind of timing. Xiangshu gave up on his idea. Chen Xing said, "Go. Let's talk about it again later." End chapter. Dinghai Fusheng Records. Chapter 24. Sorcery. Where's Fei Tian Ye? Xiangshu rode onto the official road and led over 10,000 people to Offang Palace outside the city. Tuoba Yan sent someone to protect him. Chen Xing said, "He's very safe." A marble white color appeared on the horizon. When day broke, the vast sky was still densely packed with dark clouds. The sun hid behind the clouds, and chilly winds blew everywhere. Xiangshu rode onto a small hill and looked at the ancient Chang'an city. A deathly atmosphere had already thoroughly permeated the city. "I don't understand why Fei Tian Ye would choose to act at this kind of timing," Chen Xing said. "He must have really been driven to desperation." "He wants to save Fei Tian Ye," Xiangshu said. "Is that very difficult to comprehend?" Chen Xing, "If that's what he wanted to do, why throw Feng Dage into the mirror?" Xiangshu said, "He's saving Fei Tian Ye not out of brotherly affection, but because he wants to use him." What does he want to use him for? Chen Xing uttered in disbelief. When he was reminded by Xiang Shu, he instantly understood. Once Feng Qianjun got possessed by resentment and was able to use the Senluo saber, he would be able to display an extraordinary strength. The family heirloom that had been thoroughly refined with resentment would also become Feng Qianye's, the sorcerer's, greatest support. If it were to erupt, no one would be its match. Fortunately, they had saved him. Otherwise, if he had landed in Feng Qianye's hands, then it wouldn't just be a simple matter of an outbreak of living corpses. 30 miles outside the western outskirts of Chang'an, in front of Ofang Palace. The west bank of Zhehe River was packed with Chang'an people who were fleeing for their lives with their families, and more people were arriving one after another. After the Great Qin's imperial army experienced the sudden riot, they were quickly startled awake by the sudden event and assembled at the place where Fujian was located. The Northern Armored Battalion was known for never losing a single war and now revealed the efficiency and discipline they had honed through their battles throughout the country. They gathered speedily under Fujian's unparalleled prestige. The Imperial Guards were first, then the troops within the pass, and the cavalry from the various tribes came after. The generals took only 6 hours before they urged their horses to rush to the main hall of Ofang Palace. What on earth happened? Murong Chui shouted. Silence! Tuoba Yan ordered loudly. Fujian sat upright in the main hall and said, "This matter occurred all of a sudden, there's no time to explain in detail. How many men do we have?" Each tribe reported their military strength. Fujian still has 300,000 troops under his command. Murong Chui said, "Yesterday morning, a letter was sent to the governor of Pingyang. They're currently on their way here while leading 100,000 troops to serve the emperor and will arrive tomorrow morning." The governor of Pingyang was Murong Chang. A letter sent out early yesterday morning and taking 100,000 people along to set out. Fujian knew very well that this action was obviously not to serve the emperor, but to bring the troops here to get even with him for his older sister, Princess Qinghe's death. Fortunately, Chen Xing's narration of the events that had transpired finally made Fujian sense that the Murong family was being slightly inappropriate. But looking at how Murong Chui and the others escaped in a flurry at night, they really didn't seem to be accomplices. After all, if Princess Qinghe was colluding with Feng Qianye, then they shouldn't go so far as to kill the Murong family indiscriminately as well. Fujian was filled with doubts but chose not to blow up because of this matter. He said in a low voice, "Take stock of kerosene in the palace and siege weapons. Each troop is to station themselves in advance. Be prepared for my orders to retrieve Chang'an." What on earth are those things? Before the incident had occurred, Wang Zi was having dinner when he was carried onto a carriage by the imperial guards in a hurry before fleeing. Civil and military officers throughout the city were suddenly met with such an unforeseen event. Without their hair crowns and shoes, they appeared to cut quite a sorry figure and were in a state of terror and helplessness. The great Chanyu has arrived. All of the civil and military officials became restless. Murong Chui pressed down on his sword. "The one who'll explain is here." Fujian sighed and sat down, then answered, "Listen ba." Xiang Shu entered, his whole body covered in dust. His glance swept across the crowd, and he didn't seem to care about Murong Chui at all. Chen Xing came in afterwards. "What's the situation?" Chen Xing saw that not a single sound was made in the hall and felt that something was wrong. "We were waiting for you too." Fujian said, "Speak ba, make it clear." Chen Xing glanced at Xiang Shu, who nodded as a signal for him to speak. Everyone in the main hall drew their swords in an instant. All of the generals of the Murong family were trembling slightly, as if they would rush forward and try to stab Xiang Shu to death at the next moment to avenge Princess Qinghe. But Chen Xing, who was used to witnessing Xiang Shu's skills, knew very well that as long as Fujian didn't participate in the battle, then even if everyone here were to charge forth at the same time, they wouldn't even be able to match up to even one of Xiang Shu's fingers. This guy is truly way too strong. Where should I start? Chen Xing was tired too. He walked to the steps in front of Fujian and sat down, then said to everyone in the hall, I think the true perpetrator behind everything that happened is actually His Majesty, and everyone else present here can't escape the blame either. A clamor was instantly erupted within the hall, and everyone angrily denounced Chen Xing. After the crowd quieted down, Xiang Shu suddenly said, the pitiful ones are the innocent people who died of unnatural causes because of your battles throughout the country, as well as your desire to do great things and be recognized for it. Zhen's achievements are unparalleled in the world. Fujian said in an authoritative voice, only Qin Shi Huang can stand on equal ground with Zhen. If Zhen had not recaptured the entire northern territory, only more people would have died today. Chen Xing retorted without giving him any face, but how many people did you kill? Calculate it for yourself. Every time you wage a war, hundreds of thousands of people would die. How much hatred would that have released? How many mortals were reluctant to die? All their hatred and reluctance would wander around the world and converge into resentment, and it was from this that the chaos of the drought fiends arose. Chen Xing was now almost certain of the series of events that had transpired. He spoke with fervor and confidence in the hall, and from the fragments of events, he pieced together the entire process of the havoc wreaked by the living corpses that packed Chang'an in order to overthrow Fujian. The Feng family restrained their emotions for all these years. They bought the original site where the exorcism department had been located and rebuilt a new Zifeng bank on Mount Song. While they were digging up the headquarters of the exorcism department and filling the canyon, the Feng family inadvertently found the yin-yang mirror left behind by their exorcist predecessors, as well as the method for controlling this magic weapon. So in order to confront the ever-expanding Qin state, Feng Tian Ye turned deranged and let everything get out of hand. He began to find ways to transform people who died during wars into drought fiends, then absorbed the resentment in the world and used it to refine them. He refined the shadow warriors in the mirror world, as well as the general there, and waited for the right time before releasing this living corpse army from the mirror to overthrow Fujian. You provided him with his greatest strength, Chen Xing, as well as the most suitable materials. The palace suddenly fell silent. You still haven't answered this yet, Murong Chui said eerily with grief. The Feng family was plotting a conspiracy, but why did they kill my niece? What does this have to do with Princess King He? Wang Zi immediately interrupted and asked, how did Feng Tian Ye refine them into drought fiends? Does he have an innate familiarity with such secret arts? It's a kind of sorcery, Chen Xing answered, it was not recorded in the texts I've studied. As for the specific process, we can only obtain answers by asking him about it. Tuoba Yan said, we now have very little information on our side, we don't even know the military strength of our enemy. In view of the current situation, it shouldn't be less than 200,000. In the midst of all these questions and answers, they had avoided Murong Chui's query. No one wanted to mention how Princess King He had participated in the rebellion conspiracy in front of Fujian, and they just wanted to get over it as soon as possible. Fujian's brows furrowed slightly, and he began observing the faces of the Murong family. Some people had already noticed this and revealed alarmed expressions, looked like they really were unaware of what was happening. Xiang Shu answered, preliminary estimates suggest that there are at least 300,000 living corpses. So many drought fiends hid in just one mirror. Wang Zi uttered in disbelief, where on earth did he find it? Chen Xing answered yes. It was from this mirror, and it may have been found in the battlefield at the Central Plains. There aren't a lot of living people in this world, but dead ones are still quite easy to find. Then Chen Xing held up the yin-yang mirror, a black vapor enshrouded the magic weapon in his hands as it gradually spun around in mid-air. Everyone got a fright and retreated one after another. Don't worry, Chen Xing said, I've already recovered the magic treasure, and all the drought fiends have been released too. We can only wait for the right time to come, then find a suitable place to slowly release the resentment within the yin-yang mirror little by little and purify it. We'll have to try our best not to touch it again within a short period of time. Wang Zi said, since this little brother is an exorcist, then you must be able to purify this magic treasure. Yet Xiangshu said in a low voice, even if he were to succeed, the magic weapon won't be given to you to be used. Chen Xing was about to answer when he got interrupted by Xiangshu and thought, don't tell me you guys actually want this magic weapon? Wang Zi asked again, let's put aside discussing the magic weapon for now. I'll reiterate once more, since this little brother is an exorcist, then he should have an unusual way of dealing with that sorcerer, Fei Tian Ye. No, Chen Xing answered, to be honest, after silence fell on all magic, exorcists of the world can no longer perform any kind of exorcism. At present, I'm the only exception, and my only strong point is that I'm able to expel a little resentment in a limited manner, which is only good enough for self-defense. As for Fei Tian Ye, what he's using is the plentiful amount of resentment in the world, when one waxes, the other wanes, and his is even more savage. If His Majesty isn't willing to stop the fighting and killing as soon as possible, Chen Xing continued, then today's tragedy will surely repeat itself in the future. That's all I have to say. Fu Jian looked very glum. Ever since Wang Meng died, this was the first time someone dared to denounce him in such a direct way, and what he poked at was Fu Jian's sore spot as well. If they weren't in such an unusual situation, then just these few sentences would have infuriated Fu Jian so much that he would have ordered for Chen Xing to be flogged 50 times on the spot. Tuoba Yan mediated the situation once again as he said to Fu Jian, since we're clear on the ins and outs of the situation, this servant would like to request for orders to kill our way back with the great Chanyu and Chen Xing in order to apprehend Fei Tian Ye. Fu Jian snapped out of his stupor. He pondered for a short moment and looked straight at Xiangshu, while Xiangshu raised an eyebrow at Fu Jian and answered, old Den got messed up, this isn't a joke. Fu Jian could only say, the Imperial Guards will be assigned to you temporarily for you to manage. Great Chanyu, our grudges will be settled after this chaos is over. If anyone dares seeks revenge against you in the meantime, the offenders may be beheaded. The whole hall should have erupted into another uproar, but the Murong family seemed to have realized what had happened, so they all looked at Xiangshu with hatred in their eyes one after another without saying a word. You can keep the Imperial Guards, Xiangshu said, the two of us are enough to capture Fei Tian Ye. Taking the soldiers back would just be sending them to their deaths. How could Zhen be a coward who's only interested in saving my own neck? Fu Jian said angrily, Zhen can still fight. Wang Zi. Issue an order to the 3 armies. Open up the armory. Xiangshu and Chen Xing left the main hall. Chen Xing was preoccupied with his thoughts, but he suddenly heard something when he passed by Murong Chui. In order to stop the massacres of the world, little brother has been running around everywhere, Murong Chui murmured, you must have been worrying yourself to death. After our brief encounter in Xiangyang, we haven't seen each other for a long time. Then Murong Chui took off his mask to reveal the scars left behind by burns. Chen Xing got a fright and suddenly remembered the time when he took Xiangshu to escape from the city, and when his carriage filled with kerosene rushed into the governor's manor, he had met face to face with Murong Chui. Xiangshu, however, blocked in front of Chen Xing almost imperceptibly. There's no time to find trouble with you right now, Murong Chui, behave yourself a little in front of Guowang. Xiangshu said coldly. Chen Xing's state of mind was rather perturbed. Right after he left the hall, he knew that there were some matters that would be difficult to put to rest. Even if they could clear themselves of the accusations regarding Princess King He, Murong Chui would not let him off. Xiangshu slapped Chen Xing on his back, and Chen Xing almost vomited out a mouthful of blood from how much he jolted. What are you doing? Xiangshu mocked, you're afraid of Murong Chui. Chen Xing settled down and said to Tuoba Yan, how is Feng Dage doing? Tuoba Yan motioned for Chen Xing to follow him. Feng Qianjun was safe now and was being confined in a side chamber halfway up a mountain of Offang Palace. When Chen Xing entered, Both sides cried in surprise at the same time. "That's great, you're all right," Chen Xing said. Feng Qianjun was exhausted. After hearing the story, he said, "This can't be redeemed anymore, no matter what is done, but I'll still have to go back and personally stop my dage." Chen Xing sighed and looked at Xiangshu for his opinion, yet Xiangshu said, "Although the general overview has been sorted out, there are still a lot of doubts that remain a mystery. Feng Qianyi, where did he get the technique to transform drought fiends from?" Within the room, Xiangshu, Tuobayan, Feng Qianjun, and Chen Xing sat down. When it came to this sort of situation, the more urgent it was, the calmer they needed to be. They must first find a way to deal with Feng Qianyi. Otherwise, if they were to return to the inner city of Chang'an recklessly, they would just be sending themselves there to get killed together. Chen Xing naturally had nothing to fear. He had the protection of Iupiter after all, so he had always been able to get through any daunting experiences without mishap. But this was by no means the case for Xiangshu. Chen Xing thought about it over and over, then said, "There shouldn't be any methods for controlling resentment in the exorcism department or any sorcery arts for resurrecting the dead. I'm sure he didn't dig it out from underground. That is to say, Feng Qianjun, Dage learned it from elsewhere. Xiangshu, perhaps someone had taught him such sorcery." Chen Xing interrupted, "Or he could have obtained some kind of secret scroll through a fortuitous opportunity." Xiangshu asked Feng Qianjun, "Did that bastard usually have any strange friends?" Feng Qianjun had been separated from his elder brother since he was a child, and they would only meet every 2 or 3 years when he went back to the capital occasionally. He knew almost nothing about what his elder brother usually did. Feng Qianjun shook his head. "Remember the sorcerer we bumped into on Mount Longzhong?" Xiangshu asked. Chen Xing remembered now. At dusk yesterday, Feng Qianyi also wore a mask similar to the one the mysterious man wore then. Tuobayan said, "Which means that there's still someone orchestrating this behind the scenes." Xiangshu nodded slightly and murmured, "And that person is very likely in the palace." Chen Xing said, "Could it be one of Princess King He's palace maids? Although I'm also doubtful of how on earth that mirror managed to get back into Feng Qianyi's hands from the palace, that's not the most pressing concern in the present situation." Yet Xiangshu said, "No, that's also very important." Tuobayan frowned slightly, so Chen Xing roughly described what had happened in Mount Longzhong to him. The four of them started thinking and deducing and roughly put together a story that might be incomplete, but could sort of explain everything that had happened. Someone had mastered the sorcery of resurrecting corpses and creating drought fiends, Feng Qianjun muttered, "conferred it onto my dage and convinced Princess King He as well. At least for now, the princess, my dage, and that mysterious man in Mount Longzhong are all henchmen of this sorcerer's organization." Chen Xing instantly felt like he awoke from a dream. If it were put that way, it would make more sense. Feng Qianyi's legs were immobile after all, and he stayed in the capital most of the time, so going around everywhere to gather resentment to refine the yin-yang mirror and transporting hundreds of thousands of living corpses into the mirror world was obviously not very logical. But he could sort of sense that Xiangshu left a lot of things unsaid. "Xiangshu." Chen Xing nudged Xiangshu's arm. Xiangshu shifted his gaze in an instant and stood slightly guarded as he looked at Chen Xing. "If you know anything, just say it." Feng Qianjun laughed bitterly, "Look at what my older brother has turned into, shouldn't you say what has to be said?" Xiangshu pondered for a long time. He pondered for so long that Chen Xing was about to say, never mind," before Xiangshu finally began to recall. "5 years ago, when I was 15, Xiangshu said, a doctor named Kajera came from the Qi-Le Covenant." Chen Xing had a hunch that the truth regarding the greatest mystery revolving around Xiangshu ever since he had gotten to know him was about to come to light. End chapter.